Welcome to the Intellectual Anarchy podcast. I'm Patrick Sullivan.
And I'm Catherine Cruz, and I'm just a curious cat.
And we're here today to talk about how we do innovation from the middle of the sea. We think it's a metaphor for the rest of the world because people may feel they're isolated, but today with transportation, broadband, and electricity, you can do innovation from anywhere. And we're hosted today at the Duke Innovation Lab. And there's a long history of innovation with surfing. We actually do it here because it's around this space is to do human-centered innovation. And human-centered innovation, Duke Kahanamoku, and a lot of the work he did to develop the idea of the surfboard, introducing it to people, modifying it, trying different things, was an innovation, right? Showing how it could be used and then using it, teaching other people to use it, and kind of evolving the whole thing. So he was kind of the ambassador of surfing in his day, introducing it to the world. And so the Duke Innovation Lab is dedicated to that idea of human-centered innovation. So we do a lot of deep science in other parts of the facility, but in this space, we've tried to have enough flexibility to do this human-centered thing, which is an interesting idea. There's no simple, we know a physics lab, we know chemistry lab and things like that, but how do you think of and design for and work around how do humans do things? Well, that's what we put together here. And that's what this lab is. So it's an experiment, but we kind of recognize the innovation of surfing is something we can all relate to, and all the innovations that have come around surfing to create these. Today it's an Olympic sport. Who would have figured it'd ever be an Olympic sport? Right? Yeah. And when people used to do it, it was considered, for only bad people or, after Duke, right? Like when I got my kids surfing, one of their aunts said they're going to be really bad kids. I'm serious.
Contributing to their delinquency.
Contributing to their delinquency. And I said, I appreciate that, but I disagree. I said, when we're out there, we're in the lab of the world. It's applied hydrodynamics. It's what happens with, a wave is the transmission of energy and information. And here we are experiencing it in a visceral way. I said, it doesn't get better than that. In terms of what my opinion is of learning and then also teaching them to respect the ocean, right? There's a little bit of this. You may be a big, smart, bad person, but the ocean is bigger and badder, and you have to respect it. And teaching them that respect, you learn from doing it. And so that was my thinking when my kids grew up. So everybody surfed. But at that time, I remember I was told, how can you do that? You're going to ruin the kids. And I'm not exaggerating. And I said, well, I understand why you think that, but I'm not there. I totally see a different thing. Surfing is different to me. And it's fine. They're both really good surfers, but they didn't become those hoodlums that everybody warned me about. And so this, I think, is a fitting lab for what we do at Oceanit, because the human-style innovations that happened with surfing and the iterations from, redwood logs to foam boards with fiberglass. Innovation, right? All kinds. These are application innovations and use innovations to get different kinds of people to do it, different kinds of waves, different ways to do things. From a longboard to the shortboards today, to the foils that are out there, kite surfing, windsurfing, the bat wing on these foils. There's just so much innovation that's gone on in the last 5 or 10 years even. but I give Duke a lot of credit for introducing the world to it and doing it so elegantly too, right? As an art form in a way that made it accessible to the world.
So here in Hawaii, one of the big things is a sense of place. So you've just explained why we're here in the space that we're at. But who are you, Pastor Sullivan?
Okay, I'm still trying to figure that out. So I started Oceanit almost 40 years ago with $100, and we continue to grow, but we've gotten really good at how to innovate things that turn out to be way outside the norm. And that's what has made us popular. And so I get asked all the time, like, how do you do that? Which led to the book, Intellectual Anarchy, The Art of Disruptive Innovation. And I try to break down how we think about what we do, which is what I really do in the book. It's not a how-to as much as a how we think. And then the idea is that people can adopt their own thinking to their own situation, but learning from some of the things that we've learned and framing things in ways that give them the opportunity to innovate. And that was the hope with the book, and that I think is the feedback I get today. So we thought with the podcast is to talk about what were we thinking with each of these chapters? Like, why the chapter? What do we think it means? And why did we write about it? And so the hope is to give people more context on that background, because the book is really about how we think. But again, back to making it accessible to others who can apply that thinking in another part of the world. I think if we give them a little more context about the backstory and the back thinking about it, that maybe it's something that they can then make their own.
And then what do you want to explain to people about, why Hawaii? Why here?
Well, to start with, Hawaii is a very special place. The people, the environment. But it turns out I married a girl from Hawaii, and that had a lot to do with it. We've been married. I was married on today's scale relatively young, but I have to say it's good to be lucky because it worked out very well. She's wonderful, and it's been a long time. So I think we started dating. I must have been 19 or something. I mean, but we just get along well, and
you complement each other.
We complement each other, and so that had a lot to do with it. But then it turns out when you really step back and you ask about, so what kind of an environment is really best suited for innovation? There's certain fundamental building blocks that always come up. And there's a really interesting researcher, Richard Florida, who's written a bunch about this. So, he's got some good papers out there. But the innovation happens where you've got some really basic things covered. One is diverse people. Hawaii is diverse. If nothing else, it's really diverse. So pretty much every ethnicity that you can imagine in the world is somewhere in Hawaii. And we all work together. And that's because innovation comes from differences, not sameness. It's not about how we're all the same. It's understanding our differences that creates that really rich environment for innovation. Hawaii does that in spades. The two other ingredients, one is culture, but not, Hawaii is this mix of cultures that came from all over the world and ended up in this place where we share common values, but people bring their different cultures together to make really interesting mashups of these cultures. And you really see it during, for example, New Year's, where we do fireworks and food and, all the foods that come are from all over, but it becomes kind of the norm of what it means to have a New Year's party.
Chop suey.
It makes it really interesting. But the culture, it kind of created its own culture, the culture of Hawaii. So you can be Hawaiian without being ethnically Hawaiian, but you can be Hawaiian in your heart and in the way you live and the way you see things. And so that's kind of the second key ingredient for innovation. The third ingredient is really about environment. So inspiring environments that amaze you by their beauty and the things that are going on in front of your eyes. And so Hawaii does that all day long. For anybody that's just, if you go out and watch the North Shore during the winter, it's like watching a campfire. It just goes on and you're watching these waves and then of course with surfers on the waves, but it's just like nonstop entertainment. Or drive up the Pali Highway. You have this spectacular canopy of green and blue skies and mountains and everything. It's all right there. So Hawaii has this incredible environment pretty much wherever you go. And those are the ingredients that really are what I would consider the foundational things needed for innovation. Now, in addition to that, you need to have kind of the mechanical infrastructure, transportation, energy, and broadband. And we have that too. Now, we've been doing this a long time. And we were probably one of the earliest adopters of broadband in Hawaii back in the day when we're sending things over telephone wires, literally. Before America Online, we're using the ISLEnet, which was a version of mail to connect everybody. Everybody's been connected. And because of Oceanit having people in the neighbor islands in different places, we've experimented with remote connection and working together forever. And so Hawaii has been a great place for that. Now, it turns out what we've learned about that has enabled us to come up with this very unique approach to innovation. And that's really what the book is about, and this concept that we refer to as intellectual anarchy. So that's why Hawaii is a great place for what we do.
And so why do you call the company Oceanit?
Well, so back in the day, and it was around 1985, we had these things called books. So you couldn't look anything up, but you could get books. And I had a book on Greek and Latin derivatives. And Oceanit comes from a Greek and Latin derivative of ocean dweller. And the thought was, okay, we do live in the middle of the sea, but we're actually looking at working across the globe. And so it was kind of a unique and different name, but it connected up some of the ideas. And at the same time, it wasn't, what I was trying not to do was, I had started my first business when I was 17 to earn money to go to college. So I worked in Colorado, Wyoming, Arizona, and ran construction projects and bid jobs and that kind of thing. And I didn't want to do Sullivan and Associates. It had to be bigger than me. It had to be about people and sharing ideas and this common idea of trying to make the world a better place. That was the basis for the concept of Oceanit, and the name came from that.
And so I guess how would you distill Patrick Sullivan? I mean, what is it that makes Oceanit work the way it does today?
Boy, that's a really good question. If I were going to distill it all down, is we've created a culture of how we work together, how we share ideas. We respect each other, but we entertain differences in opinion and ideas about things and settle it with science and experiments. So we try to create the space where people can have an idea and perhaps fail with the idea, but learn something really new and interesting. And that space is what enables us to do what we do. So part of my job is to create that space and protect that space where people can do that. And I tell some of these young PhDs we bring in, the only way they're going to fail is not to try something. And if they don't try something that scares them a little bit because you're not sure if it's going to work, you're not where you need to be. You need to find that thing that you're not sure, but you kind of think it's going to work. And then we build it and try it out. And so creating a safe space for that is important. And what I end up doing is making sure that I protect that. And so as a result, we've created a more horizontal organization than a vertically command and control organization. And that turns out to be much harder to manage. So it's much better for innovation, but it's very hard to manage. And what happens then is that we realized that people that thrive in this kind of an environment have a lot of self-discipline because the external disciplinary forces in a command and control organization are not there. So it requires people bring their own discipline. So it's this yin and yang thing. You've got this flexibility, but you got to have discipline. You can try experiments, but we have to deliver something, right? Payrolls every 2 weeks. That's a fact of life. It's like gravity. So we can't ignore that. So we can explore, we can try things, we can discover things, but we have to produce things. These things seem like they're in opposition of each other, but what we've learned is people can innovate on schedule. Not always the best, but to think that you can't isn't true. You learn the discipline of how to do it, and you learn the ability to listen and work with others. And you learn to look for things outside of where you're comfortable. And you learn to do those things. And so we kind of run a lot of the young PhDs through a boot camp on how to let go of, they're so smart, they live in their space, and everybody knows they're smart too. Put them in a space where they don't know and let them learn to rely on their judgment, their intuition, their grit, to be able to take on a problem that's never been solved. And the ones that do that become really good.
So you take people from their safe space into a not so safe space, right, and see what they come up with.
Exactly. And yet there's a discipline required, because one of the common questions we get from especially a lot of these young people is, I can't write a proposal, I can't produce an idea unless I have nothing else to do. And I said, I appreciate you feeling like that. This is a common thing I've heard for nearly 40 years. You're going to need to get over it. You're going to have to produce on a schedule, and you're going to have to execute even though you don't have it all worked out. And there's a way to learn to do it. People do it, but it's hard to do. And you got to work at it. If you're not willing to work at it, you're never going to learn it. Learning how to do it means put yourself out there, be willing to stumble, learn from that, get up off the ground, go back in again. And so we see this in a really interesting way with SBIR, so Small Business Innovative Research. Federal government has this program. Anybody can submit a proposal. Your chances nationally are 1 in 10. And I tell people, write 10, lose 9, and win 1. And that's par. Can you do better than that? And a lot of people are afraid to lose 1. And getting them to get over it is hard. And some people can, and some people it's like, I just can't. They won't do well because they're so afraid of failing, because they've all got the best grades from the best schools and the best everything. They're not willing to put it out there out on the edge, because they only can be right. That means they're never going to innovate. And it's probably not a good fit for them here. And we try to find those people too, because we're not trying to be mean to them or disparage them. But the people that thrive here learn how to do this. They learn how to bring a discipline. They learn how to meet schedules. They learn how to innovate. They learn how to collaborate. And we try to give them that opportunity. My job is to create that environment.
So for the people out there who are not sure they want to pick up your book, how did you organize, your thoughts around this concept?
So it's a great question. And I struggled with how to share this, but I did organize it. And there's a few major buckets. There's like really 5. So it starts with a question. Learning to ask a good question is hard. Anybody can ask any question, but asking a really good question is an art form. It's like an art and a science, but it's really an art because the right question brings to the front the right issues to think about. And learning to ask that question, even, for myself daily, I ask myself, what should I be doing? What's the most important thing for me to do today? I ask myself a question, but asking a question in a research environment is a really big step and a hard thing to do. People don't appreciate how big a deal that is, and that's one. Second is learning how to think. That may seem trite, but basically learning how to give yourself a chance to think and appreciate your ability to work through things you've never done. People are uncomfortable with that. If it's only about the grade, they don't trust themselves. It's like, what answer do you want? As opposed to, how do you think about this? And getting people to do that. So I have a whole section on thinking, and then a section on innovating. There's different things you can do to innovate, tools and ways to try things, throwing spaghetti at the wall and doing something that's so different than what you're used to kind of create the space for a really interesting idea. Delivering is so important. It's not enough to say, I've got a really cool idea if you can't do something. And the do something is deliver something, make something, try something, deliver. When we do these innovations, we call it mind to market, which is what Oceanit does. We go from the fundamental science to scaled manufacturing all the way through. Because it turns out most innovations fail, like 95%. University and national lab things never make it out of the lab because to deliver it is a lot of work. And the mindset around delivering it is non-trivial. And understanding what that means and how you do it. And we talk about it in the book, the difference between the blue zone of deep science and exploration and discovery to the green zone, delivering products to impact humans and society. That's what we do. They're connected through the rock and roll zone. And I call it the rock and roll zone because it's a tough space. It's a bit like the Bermuda Triangle. And you might get thrown back or going jettisoned into one direction or the other. It's a really turbulent area. Giving people a heads up that that's what you got to go through. Some people will learn to kind of cut across and get through that rock and roll zone. Some people may work with somebody, say, can you help me get into the rock and roll zone? Through the rock and roll zone to the green zone. And we call those people technology Sherpas. To kind of bring them across this really difficult, treacherous environment. Because it turns out you may do the cool science, but you've never talked to a real customer in a real environment. So you have no idea what people really need. And you're never going to get there unless you go and talk to them. And it may turn out they tell you you're wrong or you missed the target. And if you can't listen and understand that, it's going to fail. The worst thing is you get really smart people developing cool stuff and they try to convince the market that they're just wrong. Now that's different than what someone like Steve Jobs did because he spent so much time understanding the need that he was able to kind of tell the engineers, make it this way because this is how humans want to be. That was an incredible insight. Now, not everybody can do that, but what you can do is you can talk to people in the market. And just talking to people in the market is so important, but a lot of people in the lab just don't want to do it. And, a lot of people that go into these fields in science and technology, they may be more introverted. Very comfortable in the lab, very good with numbers, really good, kind of reading and writing and that kind of thing, which is really important. But dealing with the rest of the world with humans, you generally need somebody who just likes people. And they're going to go talk to them and kind of listen and try things. And you need those people. You need a team. And that's really what we do here. And that's where the ultimate delivery section, chapter in the book or group in the book is around disruption. Not everybody wants to be disrupted, but disruption is needed to create a vibrant world. You're challenging conventions and ideas that become outdated. And you have franchise holders that don't want to give it up. That's normal. So when you do disruption, realize some people are going to love it. Some people are not going to like you because you take what they said was that the world was just fine. And here you come along with something that makes everything we do obsolete. But hopefully when that happens, it makes a better world, right? Because we're trying to look at a more secured world with access to food. The way, for example, we need to solve the energy problem. And solving that problem will probably disrupt the energy business. Some energy companies know that. Some energy companies are going to fight tooth and nail. Nobody wants to be disrupted. And for the people that own that franchise today, they're making pretty good money. The world is great, but it will get disrupted. And every time that happens, it's going to create new opportunities. And so when you do disruption, not everybody likes you, but some people love you. And so what we found at Oceanit is we have people that really, really like us, and they come in all the time and they want us to help with really interesting problems because they keep trying to make change, and they go to the traditional service providers and others that are in these industries, and they give them only the same thing over and over and over. And when they come to us, we give them things that's like, man, no one ever thought of that. And sometimes it will just be obvious how it disrupts things. Sometimes you got to take it in steps. And you got to really disrupt an industry, if you're trying to work with an industry, you need to understand the industry. And so, for example, just one example, but these guys we've been working with at Shell Oil. So Shell is a Dutch company. And I remember spending time with the senior management. And I said, so how does this work if you guys don't pump oil? And he said, we're in the energy business. In 100 years, we won't pump oil. We will sell energy. And that's their focus. And I thought, okay, that is the right way to look at it. The world needs energy. This thing with large language models, it consumes huge amounts of energy, right? We're only going in one direction. That means more energy, not less. But the energy of the future may be totally different than the energy of the past or the energy of today. And the companies that understand that will have a future, and the companies that fight it will eventually disappear.
So you're on a wave, you're paddling out, and you're trying to get up there to get momentum, and you're going to displace a few people in the process, but you got to get out in front.
Exactly. So you don't necessarily want to drop in, but you're trying to get in a really good spot. And when you get that and you're on the right ride, it's a blast. And so the people that do this, and back to the surfing metaphor, it's exactly right. It's like when you paddle in, you get a really good wave, you remember that, and it's a blast. It's fun. It's almost like an adrenaline thing that goes on, and you remember it viscerally and cognitively. That's exactly what we do here at Oceanit. And the people that learn to do that, that's why they come back and they paddle in. Now, sometimes they wipe out and they just get up and paddle back out. And that's what we do. So that we have people that do that. They'll paddle into big waves. And when they do wipe out, they get up. Right? They're wearing like those little buoyancy things. So they're on the bottom under 60 feet of water. And they pop up, take a breath, maybe get on the jet ski for a bit, and then go paddle back out. And for the people that do it, it's like an adrenaline rush. I mean, That's a lot of people that I know that have been doing this here for a long time, that they feel, that's how they feel. Because it's fun. It's just fun. And fun, when you surf, fun is a thing you do for no particular reason, but you love to do it because you enjoy it. And we pay people here. We try to pay them well, but that's not why they do what they do. They do what they do because they like to ride the wave.
They're stoked.
Exactly. And those people, you can't buy that. Back to the comment of, I create that environment where people can do this. And that's exactly how I see my job. But because of that feeling of being stoked, again, it's not for sale. And that's where the heart and the head come together. And they produce these incredible things. That's what we're doing here at Oceanit. And that's what these podcasts explore.